Thank you, Trent. How's everybody doing? First session after lunch. Wake your ass up. Let's go. I wish I was given one of those motivational speeches. I would be really good at this point in time in the day because I'm loud, I'm obnoxious. As you can tell, I'm from South Boston, so that works well. Actually, I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, and down in Kentucky, hacking the conversation would be a completely different talk in that neck of the woods, but we're going to talk about conversation research, which is what I like to call sort of a new level of social listening, social monitoring. We'll get into all that in just a second. But to start us off, I want to welcome you to the Orange Crab of Death. I really regret eating seafood yesterday. Walked in, I was a little nervous about this stage, but this is great. Hope you guys are having a great conference. Inbound's a lot of fun, and I've been honored to speak here a couple times, really enjoy it. So what I want you to do is think of a marketing decision that you have made in the last 30, 60 days. Just get something in your mind. Doesn't have to be a major decision, just some marketing decision that you've made in the last 30 to 60 days. And once you have that clear in your mind, then I want you to think of the insight or piece of data that helped you make that decision. Now, there's a pretty good chance that you probably had a pretty easy time coming up with the thing, the decision that you made. Because you make decisions every day, it would have been easy to say, we decided to take out ads in this channel. We decided to change the content and the copy over here. We decided to go after a new sub audience in our target set, etc. But when you were asked what piece of data, what piece of information led you to make that decision, there's a really good chance that most of the people in this room went, why is that? Because we make a lot of assumptions as marketers. We assume we know our target audience. We assume we know our brand. We assume we understand our competitors and the landscape that happens out there in the social media space. We don't back up those assumptions very often with data. Now, some of us work at companies and brands that are big enough, that have pockets that are deep enough to go out and do consumer research and do profiling and focus groups and surveys and understand our target audiences really, really well. And we check in with that data every year, every couple years, but we don't check in with that data on a regular basis. It's more of an annual, semi-annual sort of thing. What we're doing when we make decisions around our marketing for our companies, for our brands, or for our clients, and we're doing it without data, is we're assuming. And I don't think I need to tell you what happens when we assume. So, what happens when we assume is we become guesswork marketers. And guess what happens to guesswork marketers? Eventually, they get fired. They lose their job because they're guessing. They don't have the data to back up their assertions. They don't have solid information that makes them confident that what they're going to bat with is going to work. They're overconfident in their assumptions, and they don't have the real information to back it up. So what this means is we as marketers who do not want to be guesswork marketers need to arm ourselves with data. How do we do that? Because traditional research like surveys and focus groups is rather cost prohibitive. It costs a lot of money to go out and do a nationally representative survey. It costs a lot of money to do a focus group, even of 12, 15 people, because you have to select them, and then you have to, some people fly to Kansas City and survey people in a mall. Some people actually, do it in other markets and whatnot. But you have to spend a lot of time and a lot of energy capturing that data, and then you have to take a lot of time to compile and analyze that data before you actually get to an insight. So it costs time and it costs money. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can't access it. It just means you have to know what resources you need going in. And I'm not here to tell you that traditional research, traditional data like you get from surveys and focus groups is something you don't need to worry about, because you do. That information is vital and critical to understanding your target audience. But there are millions of conversations going on online right now. And there are a million more conversations going on online right now. And those conversations are being had by people who consume or are potential consumers of your product or service. There's somewhere out there, someone is saying, I need help with this problem, or I'm looking for a solution to this problem. And there's a pretty good chance, regardless of what industry you're in, there's someone out there somewhere saying that about your vertical, about your business. It may not be that they're mentioning your brand name. It may not be that they're even in your geographic footprint, but somebody out there is looking for help, and you have a solution to help them. And so it's not just about listening for opportunities. It's not just about monitoring for brand mentions. There are millions of conversations out there where consumers are voluntarily giving us information that we can analyze. And it's not just about solutions that they're seeking or answers that they're seeking to answer questions or problems that they have. It's also, we can mine information about what content they like, about what activities they participate in. We can go way deeper than demographics and psychographics by understanding what they talk about in online conversations, who they talk to, what kind of content they think is good, what kind of content they share. Let's level set a little bit here on some terminology. You've heard before, back about 10 years ago or so, you started to see companies come out and say, we are a social media monitoring solution. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, they all started calling themselves social media listening solutions. So they just changed up the terminology. But let's get down to why they changed it and what the definitions of these two things are. Now, this is not Webster's definition. This is Jason Falls' definition. So you can argue with it if you want. I'd be happy to discuss the nuances of this. But in my personal opinion, monitoring is a reactive activity. You are waiting for something to happen online. You use some sort of software, some sort of search. It might be Google Alerts. It might be something free like socialmention.com, or it might be a complex listening tool that you subscribe to. There's listening tools within the HubSpot platform. There's other listening platforms out there that you can subscribe to understand what's happening online. But monitoring is where you sit and wait for someone to say your name, and then you react. You route that to customer service. You respond to that concern. You thank them for the compliment, whatever it is. Listening, in my mind, is much more of a proactive activity. You know that there's conversations out there, and you know that you can actually intentionally, proactively go after people who are saying certain things. It was probably 2007 or 2008, we started to see the very first examples of social listening versus monitoring, because we had sales teams, or salespeople rather, probably in that era, who were smart enough to say, if I can listen for a mention of my brand name, I can also listen for a mention where someone says, I'm looking for a new X software product. In fact, I remember one from 2007, I believe it was, on Twitter, where someone was comparing phone systems, corporate phone systems for big offices. And someone actually said, this product versus this product, what do you guys think? I hope that person was followed by a lot of people online who had experience working with those phone systems. Otherwise, the tweet went nowhere. But it did go somewhere. It went to someone who was selling phone system software. And they found it, and they reached out to that person on Twitter and said, hey, we would love to answer your questions about phone systems. It led to a $250,000 sale. And that's just from monitoring tweets, right? So there's opportunities for you to go out there and proactively, from a sales perspective, look for people who are looking for things. But let's even take listening beyond that. I want to talk to you today about using social listening platforms and using this proactive approach to listening in a much more research-oriented way, because we can close that gap on how much traditional research costs and how time-consuming it can be, and we can actually get really good consumer insights in near real time, sometimes even in real time, that can help give us those nuggets of data we need to make marketing decisions so that we are not a guesswork marketer. So the end point of this is, I don't want you to lose your job because you're guessing. I don't want you to lose your job because you're making assumptions. I want us to keep our jobs and keep growing our businesses because we understand what's out there and we know how to use it. So typically, traditional research is used to enhance 3 basic things. Now, there's lots of sort of, sub-fingers of all this if you want to parse it out. But market research, consumer research is typically used to improve your product, improve your experience with that product or service, or improve messaging. And within messaging, I would also fold in targeting of audiences, things of that nature that go into the whole marketing mix. So these are the three areas. What I want to show you today are some examples of some companies. Some of them I've worked with, some of them I have not. I've reached out to the social listening and research platforms and practitioners out there and said, hey, I just want to tell success stories. I don't want to just tell my success stories. So give me your best stuff. So I've got some examples of people using conversation research, advanced social listening, to improve their products, their experiences, and their messaging. And I want to show you how this works. And hopefully you'll see that it's not as complex as it sounds. There are certainly some roadblocks in the way for a small business to do it, but we're going to talk about those too. So let's start out with understanding real quickly the difference between traditional research and conversation research, because conversation research presents some interesting problems if you are a data scientist, if you're a data analyst, if you're a market researcher. But even if you're not, you need to understand what these components are. Traditional research is very structured. When you write a survey of questions that you ask. It's very structured. There's a format to it. You're looking for a certain number of answers in a certain amount of time, and you're done. You're also directing the feedback. You are asking the questions of those people. There is subject bias as well, because you are asking a certain group of people, whether they be survey folks or whether they be focus groups that you've set aside. You're looking for a certain type of customer, a certain type of consumer. So there's subject bias there. The subjects that you are picking have to meet your criteria in order for you to consider their opinion valid. And we've talked about the other prohibitions of traditional research, which is it's very time consuming and it can be very costly depending upon how you approach it. Conversation research, however, using social listening platforms and techniques to understand your consumers is unstructured, and that's the biggest problem with the data. When you do a search for a brand name or a keyword phrase or something online, you're getting a lot of data back. If you've ever logged into a listening platform and just done a generic search, you know you see a lot of stuff that comes up that probably has absolutely nothing to do with what you're looking for, right? There's a lot of crap there, and it's unstructured. I was actually had a conversation last night with some of you know Tom Webster, who is the Vice President for Strategy for Edison Research. He spent all day Tuesday doing exit polling, and when you go through an election cycle and do not hear the name Edison Research, that means they did their job very, very well. No major news outlets that they serve had to retract any projections, which means they nailed it all night long. So he is a traditional market researcher. And we were talking last night, and he said, Jason, the problem with data, 90% of the problem with data is you have to clean it, right? You're going to get a lot of crap. And when you're looking at unstructured data, you're going to get a lot more crap than you would if you did it in other ways. So it's very unstructured, and that is a problem, but there are ways that you can solve that, and we'll touch on those in a minute. But a positive is it's unsolicited feedback. You're not directing the questions. You're just looking for people mentioning things who are mentioning things because they want to, because they want to participate. They want to ask these things. So that's it removes bias from the conversation. You're just looking for mentions. You're not asking them questions. You're not pre-selecting an audience other than I just want an audience that's mentioning these things. And so it removes that subject bias from what you're doing. You can do this in real time or near real time because the technologies that are out there, the social listening platforms, offer that to us. There are a couple that have maybe a 10-minute queue cycle. There are a couple that have real-time data feeding into them. And there's different price points for what you really want. But you can move quickly to discover insights to help you make marketing decisions. And it can be, compared to traditional research, very cost efficient. A nationally representative sample survey of 1,000 people with a reputable research firm is going to cost you anywhere between probably $20,000 and maybe $50,000, depending upon the depth and size and scope of your questions, right? That's a big chunk of change for a lot of companies, right? There's some companies that it's not a big chunk of change for, but that's a big chunk of change for most people. A social listening platform can be had for under $100 a month. Now, there's some features that you're going to be missing. You're going to have to do a lot more legwork, but you can get to this type of data and these types of insights in a very cost-efficient way. So let's talk about the three types of research and look at examples of how they're being used in today's marketplace. Kettle brand potato chips launched a new flavor, maple bacon. Anybody had them? Are they good? I don't know. So they launched maple bacon a few years ago. They were very nervous about this launch. They had done a lot of social listening, online conversation research to find out what types of flavors people would be interested in, et cetera, et cetera. And this is actually a post-product enhancement. So they launched this along with its other two flavors, sea salt and New York cheddar. And what happened scared the hell out of them, because as soon as they launched this new flavor, they had a huge spike in negative conversations online about the brand. There were a lot of people out there who didn't like the flavor, but there were also a lot of people out there who did like the flavor. So it started a discussion about the brand, a debate about whether or not the flavor was good. It scared them because they weren't used to negative conversations. People love sea salt, people love New York cheddar. There wasn't a real conflict there, but it sparked some controversy. And there was some internal conversation. Do we pull it? Do we take it off the market? But they stayed the course, and over the course of a year, they realized a couple of things. First of all, the conversation didn't die down. This wasn't a debate that stopped after the product launched. It kept going. And the increase in buzz around Kettle brand potato chips sustained itself so long that they realized it doesn't matter if half of the people talking about maple bacon are talking negatively and half of them are talking positively. What matters is we've, 3 or 4 times multiplied our online buzz. People are talking about us, and it correlated to sales increases. So they used conversation research to understand how people were reacting to a new product, and they ultimately decided we're going to stick with it, stick to our guns, because we're not seeing this conversation fade, and it's correlating to sales numbers, right? So they didn't do something with their product in this particular case. Lassen Innovation is a company that did some conversation research trying to help Hans Toys enter the, I think, $1.8 billion children's toys market. And they knew that because they were talking about children, this was an interesting research problem to solve, because children aren't typically talking online, but their parents are. So they set out to analyze online conversations about parents talking about toys, what toys they use, what toys they give their kids, et cetera, et cetera. And ultimately what they found was there was a gap. Parents would say, there's plenty of toys out there that help my child figure out form, Legos, very form-based toy for children, but there's not enough out there that helps them understand function, how things work, the mechanics of things. And so the insights that Lassen was able to turn around to Hans Toys led to a 63% decrease that year in design costs for their new line of toys, which you see samples of here. 43% less of a budget on research costs. It saved them a lot of money on research. And the first year projected sales of the new line of products was $3.8 million. So they went out and said, we're going to create a new product out of thin air. What are we going to create? And they used online conversation research to guide them in their new product, and it led to a successful new product launch. Now there's this. Now, for those of you who have never worked at an agency, just imagine you're on the brand side and an agency is presenting this to you. This is a SWOT analysis that a digital marketing agency did for Jaguar service centers. And it was their global business, right? So this is millions of dollars of business. And this agency waltzed in and said, here's what we know about Jaguar service. You have high levels of trust and perceptions of quality globally and in Germany. Your service pricing is positively mentioned within the overall market. But look at some of the other things, opportunities. Target campaigns at women in the United Kingdom. Adapt the experiential elements in Germany to your other markets, because you're getting really high reviews and rave reviews for your experience in Germany. There's an increasing awareness of independent dealers that you have to look out for. That's a threat to how you do business. And you've got electronics issues in the United States that you don't have elsewhere. So you need to look at those and figure out what's going on there. This was a digital marketing agency who walked in to pitch their business for pay-per-click and website and social media. This was not a business consultant that said, I'm going to go out and figure out what consumers are concerned about when it comes to dealing with you. Tell me if you are at an agency now, that if you didn't walk into a pitch with this, you wouldn't win that business. I know you would. I've been at agencies. If we walked in with this, I would be the cockiest son of a bitch in the room. I'd be like, I'm getting this business because they don't know this, and I do. If you're at a brand and you're sitting there as a marketing manager, a decision maker, and you get this type of SWOT analysis from someone pitching you business, are you not going to be like, maybe we should go with those guys? Hell yeah, you are, because they're bringing you intelligence, data from your consumers that you don't already know about. All right, user experience. Several of you probably know or are aware of the fact that I spent a couple years as vice president at Cafe Press. Walked in one morning, looked at our social listening dashboard, and I saw this odd dip in sentiment overnight. So I started to dive into it and really parse, okay, what are the topics that are negative, and I was researching the conversation. Ultimately, what I found out is someone had started complaining about a design that had been uploaded on Cafe Press. Now, for those of you who don't know, Cafe Press is where you can get custom t-shirts, coffee mugs, mouse pads, shower curtains, thongs. Yes, I said thongs. You can get your own design, your own picture, put on all of these base good products, and it's kind of like YouTube. YouTube doesn't make the videos. They make the video player where you can see the videos. Cafe Press doesn't make the designs. They allow you to put the design on a product. So it's user-generated content. And with user-generated content, anybody can upload anything. Unfortunately, in today's world, they do. This particular design was rather offensive to a group of people. It was a design that, I don't want to describe it because it's rather disturbing, but needless to say, it was very offensive to people who suffer from dwarfism, people who are little people. And it had a word on the design that rhymes with digit and starts with M. And I don't say that word anymore because of what I learned in this conversation. What was happening was someone had uploaded this offensive design, and people in that community were talking about how offensive it was and how terrible Cafe Press was and so on and so forth. So I jumped in on Twitter and said, hey, this is Jason. I'm a vice president here. Help me understand the problem. There's obviously something going on here. And so they pointed me to the two sort of nonprofit organizations for little people in the United States, documentation that showed that they consider the M word, as they call it, hate speech. And that set off a trigger in my mind because there's about 3 or 4 things you cannot do at Cafe Press. You cannot upload pornography, you cannot violate someone's copyright or trademark, and you cannot upload anything that has anything to do with hate speech. So I called our chief legal counsel and said, hey, I want to add this word to our hate speech catalog so that it guts the website of references to that word, et cetera, et cetera. I pointed her to the documentation online where these two organizations, said basically that's an offensive word to us. And the chief legal counsel was like, okay, done. So we changed the customer experience at Cafe Press all because we were paying attention to what was happening online and researching that conversation in relevant ways. This is something I did recently for a healthcare company. They were very concerned about the negative conversation online when their brand was mentioned, but as we referred to earlier, there was a lot of noise and they couldn't figure out where the noise was coming from. They couldn't decipher the signal from the noise. So we actually went in and we found 22,000 conversations. We went through and did something called disambiguation of the data, which is a really big word that I like to use because I'm a redneck from Kentucky and people never realize that I'm smart enough to say a word like that. So we disambiguated the data. And we got it down to 1,600 out of 22,000, 1,600 conversations that were actually from consumers, proactively saying something about this particular brand. We went through and manually scored them. We didn't want to trust the machines. We wanted to go back to the client and say, this is what people are really saying. We scored them for sentiment, for topic, et cetera. And what we discovered was their primary concern, they have a lot of hospitals in this particular brand, the quality of care conversations that were negative was about 18% of their negative conversation set. And they were very concerned about this. So we went through in our manual scoring and we read each and every one of them and we sourced them and all that good stuff. And what we discovered is that all 18%, I don't remember how many posts it was total, but all 18% were driven by 4 people. So if you are looking at a broad dashboard of a tool and it says 18% of the negative conversation is about the quality of care, and you don't dive in deeper and research that conversation, you might spend hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to figure out what the hell's going on in your hospitals. You might make a ton of phone calls, spend a lot of time asking nurses and doctors what's going on. Why is our quality of care slipping? Interviewing customers, doing focus groups, doing surveys. But instead, we were able to say, hey, it's 4 people. And all 4 of them had a bad experience, and they're pissed off, and nobody's responded to them. Let's reach out and handle them with a little care, and the whole 18% goes away, or at least dies down. And if there are 4 people who are not going to change their mind and have made it their life's mission to talk bad about you online forever, at least you know, all right, we got to deal with 18% negative always, because those 4 people aren't going to shut the hell up. And you move on with your life. You contextualize that information a little differently. Messaging, this is where the marketers in the room, and I know most of you are marketers, this is where you're going to get excited, because this is where conversation research can actually help you in your day-to-day job. How many people in here own a Vespa? Any Vespa owners? Nobody ever wants to admit that. Or there's not very many of them, I don't know. Anyway, so Vespa, as you know, they're kind of a high-end, chic little scooter thing. I wouldn't fit on one, but anyway. So they set out to find a bunch of new customers, which most brands do. We want to acquire new customers. That was their strategy. And they said, well, in order to do that, we want to find out more about our current customers so that we can do something to attract more of those people. So they did an analysis of their customer base online, and they did analysis of people online that they identified as being other scooter owners, other brands, right? And they compared the two, and what they realized was, when you look at Vespa owners versus others, the big differences are Vespa owners index much greater for the content topics of style, fashion, design, art, etc. So what they did is they said, you know what, instead of blogging about scooters or transportation, let's change the blog. In fact, let's not even call it a blog, let's call it a magazine. And we'll make our magazine about fashion and design and architecture and style. And in 3 months' time, they drove 50,000 new visitors to their website. Of those 50,000 people who came there, they captured 2,800 new sales leads, 45% of which were new to Vespa, people who had never encountered the brand before, achieving the goal of getting more customers. And they increased their online buzz, people just talking about the brand in general, by 24% over that 3-month period. This is all about researching the conversation, researching the people who are talking about you or what your audience is talking about online, and understanding an insight about them that's not demographics, it's not psychographics, it's social graphics. It's what they do online, what content they like, what content they read, what content they share. This is an example that I used in my work with Elasticity, which is a digital marketing agency in St. Louis. We were pitching a frozen dinner product company. Is about as close as I can get to it and telling you who it was. God love the NDA, right? Anyway, so frozen food, frozen dinners. And we did online analysis. We were doing conversation research about the brand, about their competitors. But I said, you know what, let's back up a little bit and just see what people are talking about when they talk about dinner. So this is a sentiment chart and a passion chart from a tool called NetBase around the conversation of dinner over the course of a year. And as you can see, the charts there plot along with good sentiment and good passion, not real high passion, because people aren't going to be, oh, I love dinner, or I love cooking dinner. Some will, but some won't. For the most part, the passion is going to be, I like doing this, not I love doing this. But the sentiment is really high. It's a positive experience for people. When they talk about dinner online, they're excited about going to dinner, they're excited about cooking dinner, they're excited about what mom cooked for dinner, whatever. However, in August and September, the sentiment drops off the chart. Look at it. Well, not completely off the chart, but way down. Why is that? Back to school. Moms hate cooking dinner for about 3 weeks because the schedule changes. They're juggling too much. There's time commitments. They got to adjust to the new schedule. They need something fast. They need something easy. So we go to the client and say, in August, change your content to focus on quick, easy meals. And because your competitor's not doing it, you win top of mind. Pretty logical and simple. This was a high-level chart. We didn't have to dive real deep to figure this out. The last one I want to give you around messaging and targeting is really interesting because Tylenol noticed that people were talking about them with a high frequency on websites devoted to knitting. Now, it would be hard-pressed for you to guess that I don't knit, right? So I looked into this, and what I discovered was knitting, because it's a very intense hand-eye thing, can cause headaches. And people were saying, well, take some Tylenol or whatever. So they were talking about Tylenol on these websites. And Tylenol saw this because they were researching the conversation. Where do people talk about us? Why do they talk about us, et cetera? All Tylenol did with that information was they started advertising on knitting websites and communities. And guess what? They saw according to them, they wouldn't give me the number, they saw significant increases in website visitors from these knitting communities to the Tylenol website. Now, I have 1,000 questions after hearing that, because who the hell goes to Tylenol's website? You can't buy it there. I don't get it. But anyway, they invested money in these communities, which was a good symbol to the community members. Hey, Tylenol is advertising on a site that we love. They're supporting them financially, so it's a very good win-win for customers. Last one I want to give you here. This is a real quick one. 2 movies a couple years ago were launching in the summertime, Bad Grandpa and Sex Tape. This is an analysis of different markets and the online buzz, positive, negative, and volume in New York and LA, which are the big media markets, the Deep South, African American markets, and Hispanic markets. And if you look on the 2-week average leading up to launch, the Sex Tape was indexing very, very high and very, very positively in the media markets. So the media thought Sex Tape is going to be a big deal. This is before the movie came out. This is the buzz. So the buzz in New York and Hollywood was Sex Tape is going to be awesome. But the corresponding buzz in other markets around Sex Tape was not so much compared to other films that were coming out that week or in that time period. Bad Grandpa was indexing way lower in the big media markets, but way higher in the other markets. Want to render a guess on which movie was a success and which was a flop? The media markets don't know their ass from a hole in the ground, because Bad Grandpa in its first week drew $34 million, and Sex Tape drew $14. $20 million in the first weekend is a big difference. And so Bad Grandpa was a modest success. Sex Tape was a flop. Don't you think the producers would have liked to have had this information 2 weeks out in those markets so they could say, hey, for Sex Tape, let's go do some more trailers, do some more ad spend, et cetera, in these other markets to kind of support that so that the movie drives more revenue. This is all from looking at online conversations of people talking about these 2 films. So what's in your toolbox? How do you do this, and how do you do it on a budget? Well, the budget part is a little complex, but as I mentioned earlier, there are tools out there where you can do this for free or no charge. You can access tools that are free, but your feature set is going to be dull. You're going to have to do a lot of manual labor, a lot of legwork. You're going to have to invest a lot more time into it. You get what you pay for, okay? Socialmention.com has been around forever, free to use. It only indexes 30 days back, so you got to download the CSV. Thank goodness it allows you to download the CSV. And then you can parse that up and manually score and all that stuff however you want with whatever keywords you're searching for. There are tools like Viral Heat, Clear.com with a K, Mention.com, several others out there that are low investment. Some of them are under $100 a month. Some of them are a couple $100 a month. Then you get into the social listening platforms that might be used for more advanced purposes. There's obviously a component of social listening within the HubSpot platform. There's a component of social listening in other social media management systems. But then you get into the tools that are really focused on being research-oriented social listening tools. These are tools like Infogee. Physiology is the one that did the movie example. NetBase, which I mentioned earlier, which is one that I like to use quite a bit. These are research-based tools. They're going to cost you a good bit of money. They're going to be between $2,000 and $5,000 a month to invest in these tools. If you're at an agency, you can potentially spread that out among clients. Obviously, it's really limited to the enterprise and the bigger brands. But again, you can do it with lower priced tools. You just have to be prepared to do a lot of manual lifting in the data to make sure that you're analyzing it properly and putting it in the right context. The fancier tools have automated charts and graphs that just pop up and make it look pretty and help guide you down a path to finding things. So it makes it a little less heavy lifting, but it can be done without having to invest a whole lot of money. Your roadmap when you're doing this will look a little bit like this. You're going to have questions. You're going to ask a lot of questions about your target audience. You're going to ask a lot of questions about your client. What answers are you looking for? Why are we doing this research? What is the ultimate goal? It's just like any strategic plan. You start with a goal, right? Well, when you're starting out with research, you start out with what answers are we looking for? What is it that we want to find out about our target audience or segment that we're looking at that we don't already know? Then you're going to collect the data. This is where you use the tools. It might be a survey. It might be customer service results. It might be that you go to your social listening platform and put in some keywords, and you try to find these conversations where people are talking about the things that you need to analyze in order to get to those answers. Then you are going to that big word that I like so much, disambiguation. And this is where I took the 22,000 results and got it down to 1,600 because I went through and said, okay, let's get rid of all the press releases because those are bullshit. It's the company talking about themselves. Let's get rid of all the job postings because that's not the voice of the consumer. That's people looking for jobs. That's a whole different category that we don't need to analyze for this voice of the consumer project. And obviously your goals change how you do this. You're going to get rid of sweepstakes and contests. You're going to get rid of professional reviews if the company's gone out and paid people to review them online, so on and so forth. What I try to do with every engagement is, if the goal is to get the voice of the consumer, is I try to weed out anything that isn't an actual user or prospective user saying something online about that brand. Now, if you remember the slide about the healthcare, a good portion of that negative conversation was reaction to news. That's different than retweeting. That's different than posting a press release because that hospital system may post news that they are closing a facility in Seattle. And there's going to be several hundred people that say they're closing, or that retweet the article or that post a link to the news. I don't care about that. But when someone goes online and says, this is breaking my heart that they're closing this facility because that's the news reaction I'm looking for because that's an actual consumer saying something. I will tell you that it doesn't matter how much you pay per month for these tools. No tool is going to be able to disambiguate for you to the point to where you can say with 100% confidence that you know that you have the voice of the consumer and you're not omitting anything. There's a lot of manual legwork that goes into this. Then you're going to, after you have a clean set of data, and remember 90% of the work is cleaning the data, once you have a clean set of data, then you go exploring. What does the data tell me? What are people saying? What are the negative themes that pop up? What are the positive themes that pop up? What are the other brands that they mention? Ask yourself a lot of questions. Real quickly so that we can get to some questions, this is a framework of curiosity that I sort of use as inspiration, and I'm going to share the slides. I'll tweet out the link to the slides afterwards. You don't have to worry about writing all this down if you don't want to. But I ask these questions about the data that I'm looking at. What does it look like? How big is it? Where's it coming from? How does it work? How does that data work in terms of male versus female, in terms of if I can look at ethnicity, if I can look at other demographic factors? How does it function? How does it change and evolve over time? What does the conversation look like now versus 30 days ago versus 18 months ago versus 5 years ago if I have access to that type of archive? What are the trends? How is it impacted by other things within the industry? If you see weird spikes going on in June, that might happen to be when your competitor announced something. So go back and make sure that you're sort of cross-pollinating with outside influences and impacts. All of the charts and graphs that brands are going to be looking at in the next 30 days are going to be impacted by the election. You're going to see that sort of waffle in your numbers. And so understand the context of that and how it was impacted by it. And then you have to ask yourself why. Why is it like this? And I have a little thing that I wanted to read to you that is a series of questions that I got from sort of the Six Sigma approach in Toyota Motor Manufacturing, because they like to tell their assembly line workers, if you have a problem, ask why 5 times. If you ask why 5 times, you're more than likely going to nail the answer. And here's an example. The robot is stopped. Why? Because the circuit's overloaded. Why is the circuit overloaded? Because there's insufficient lubrication in the bearings. Why is there insufficient lubrication in the bearings? Because it's clogged with metal shavings. Why is it clogged with metal shavings? Because there's no filter on the pump. Put a filter on the pump, and they all go away, and everything works well. So I did this for me personally once. Why? I like speaking. Why do I like speaking? Because I enjoy sharing what I know. Why do I enjoy sharing what I know? It makes me feel good to do that. Why does it make me feel good? I like it when people like me. Why do I like it when people like me? Because I'm a needy, insecure child who craves attention and validation. John Muir Laws is a blogger who came up with this. I rearranged it and kind of adapted it to my own style, but I don't want to go away without crediting him. He's a naturalist, has a blog at johnmuirlaws.com. He's written several field guides to birds and whatnot, so if you're interested in that type of thing, I would encourage you to go find Mr. Laws. He is in the Bay Area out in California. So, you can use this framework of curiosity. You can do conversation research. You can learn everything there is to know about your consumer that the conversation will give you, so that when you make decisions, you are not a guesswork marketer, so that you are backing them up with pieces of data that make you confident that you are going to market, you are going to customers with something that is going to work. You can do all of that, or you can keep assuming. Thank you for your time today, folks. Appreciate it. One more time.